1586, Winchester, England. A candle glimmers in the corner of the room, casting light on the straw mattress where you and Matilda are about to indulge in passionate lovemaking. You whip back your undertunic. Matilda gasps. She's never actually seen a man's ball bag so finely strapped. She smiles coyly and blows out the candle. Find out why Matilda was so impressed by those trussed beanbags in today's episode of The Infographics Show, Shocking Medieval Sex Traditions. Number 20. Okay, so what is it with you tying up your testicles? Actually, it's singular. You've only strapped one ball. If Matilda falls pregnant from your night of hanky-panky, you'd prefer the baby to be a male. And everyone knows it's the left testicle that produces girls and the right one that makes boys. And your love knot will stop the sperm being ejaculated from the guilty gonad. That might sound quite absurd, but trust us, it's about to get a whole lot weirder. Number 19. Let's say that you and Matilda tied the knot. We mean marriage this time, not a sperm-blocking one. The candlelight is glimmering, Matilda has that look in her eye, but your John Thomas refuses to stand at attention. You just can't get it up. In the Middle Ages, with Viagra not yet available from sketchy online pharmacies, this was very serious business. Take the 1370 court case in England, where a lady named Tadia Lamherd accused her husband John Sanderson of being the owner of a penis that didn't work. The court asked three, quote, honest women to put this to the test, and after stroking John's work-shy weenie for a few minutes, they reported that it neither expanded nor grew. The court had no choice. They annulled the marriage. John was pretty much tainted goods. Now you're a well-read Middle Ages male, so you know all about erectile dysfunction. You've read the medical textbook Provisions for the Traveler and Nourishment for the Sedentary. And so you are quite sure you could bang for England. You know that cow's milk mixed with fresh cloves and wood of Gallengale will give you a raging stiffy that'll last for as long as you require. You've also heard that quail testicles mixed with bark oil, amber, and that essential ingredient large-winged ants will pretty much do the same. The question is, what positions are you and Matilda gonna do now that your little fella is definitely gonna rise to the occasion? Number 18. The church would probably prefer you do it face-to-face, aka missionary position. But the great 13th century German Dominican friar, philosopher, and scientist Albertus Magnus listed 5 acceptable ways to get it on. Like most religious scholars, he says missionary is the best way, but the penis works in mysterious ways, so there must be contingencies. Magnus says sometimes you might have to get down with the side-to-side position, or try sitting, or even standing. The church isn't against sex, it just wants you to do it right. There's a fine line you have to walk. If it were up to the church, you'd use your penis wisely, but of course, you don't. And that comes with a heavy burden of number 17, guilt. You are racked with guilt over the feelings you've been having since you hit the ripe young age of 12. You read the solution for those sexual urges is cold food and drinks. Salted fish with some vegetables and vinegar, all mixed with cold water, will do the trick. This is what the monks eat when they're overcome with irrepressible thoughts of bonking. The next question is, when should you have sex? Number 16. The church would prefer that you did not bonk on the holy days, and you should probably leave your wife alone when she's menstruating, pregnant, or lactating. Besides that, you both have a marital debt, and that means when the other demands, you should give them what they want. In the eyes of the law, even if you forced yourself upon your spouse, it's all good. These rules seem to work in your favor more than hers. A woman who wants too much sex is deemed lustful. And you have to be careful a lustful woman isn't trying to put a spell on you. As for where you do it, you being a man of humble means and all, your conjugal bed is shared with your mother and your sister. There's not much privacy for you and Matilda, so like everyone else, you do your business in the fields, backyards, alleyways. You've even had an occasional screw in the local cemetery. If you're married, it's just what you have to do. Everyone knows if you don't get regular sex, very bad things can happen. Number 15. The scholars say a life without sex could turn you into a sexual animal. Before you know it, you're taking the neighbor's dog down to the cemetery or trying to get it on with your younger sister in an empty church. If women go without it, the retention of seed could make her faint, convulse, or send her stark raving mad. Don't you ever forget it. Women need to orgasm. If you want to make babies, you better make sure she has a good time, because babies are made on the back of 2 orgasms, not just 1. At least that's what the books say. But what if you just can't get any sex? No problem, there's a solution for that too. Number 14. Brothels. Sure, this might look a little bit contradictory given all the rules around sex, but needs must be met in the Middle Ages, so there are brothels and prostitutes in all the big towns. You actually lost your virginity in a brothel, just as many of your friends did when it was time to strike off that particular rite of passage. A trip to the local knocking shop in your day and age is nothing out of the ordinary. That doesn't mean the prostitutes who work in them aren't given a hard time. Life is tough for these women, especially as it's not easy avoiding becoming pregnant. Some of the tricks of the trade include bunging up their vaginal passage with wool soaked in vinegar, and then there's the more old-school method of plugging herself with bits of wood or beeswax. The problem for you is diseases, something no amount of beeswax will prevent. Number 13. STDs scare the hell out of you, but not as much as leprosy. You once read in a book that said if you dip your wick in a woman, you might become a leper. The book explains that even if she doesn't have leprosy, the guy who slept with her before you might have passed it to her by injecting putrid leprosy vapors along with his semen. Those vapors will be passed to you if you're the next guy to sleep with her. Before you know it, your body is covered with sores. But there's a solution to the leprosy problem. Wash your member thoroughly after it has been used with a strange woman, preferably in water mixed with vinegar, and if that's not available, your own urine. Let's be honest, having sex with one woman is a much safer bet. So, how do you get married? Number 12. As long as you're 14 and she is 12, you're good to go in medieval England. The church wants to control marriage, but you don't need a priest to get hitched. You really don't even need your parents' permission, but it would help. The problem with the lack of official ceremony is men have occasionally taken advantage of women. As a medieval text explains, some rather sketchy men over the years have handed a woman a ring of reeds and asked her to marry him just so she will fornicate with him. What a dick. That's why it's best to always have witnesses to a marriage. Truth be told, it's likely the girl you're to marry has been on the cards for quite a few years, long before you were both at marrying age. Marriage is a kind of business deal your parents make with the girl's parents, sometimes arranged when you're just little kids. She'll put on her best dress for the big day and hopefully the whole village will attend the get-together. This can be expensive for you males. The man usually has to pay for the wedding feast. After all, you've deprived the community of a bride. That doesn't come for free. But what about the first night? Will there be fireworks? Number 11. Damn right there will, and you ain't gonna get much privacy. The entire village is excited about your inaugural bang. All the women in the village help your new wife get to the matrimonial bed, and the males do the same for you, carrying you both there, hoping the consummation of your marriage will give the community a new addition. Tonight, among the grunts and screams coming from your bedroom, the whole community will be getting blind drunk, sometimes right outside your bedroom window. It's unlikely you'll get this bed to yourself very often, so you're gonna make the most of it. You just better make sure that thing of yours works. Now you need to watch how an erection works, or have a look at why you shouldn't masturbate according to the myths. Number 10. But imagine if you got to the bedroom and you were locked out. And we don't mean locked out of the room, we mean barred from your wife's foo-foo. That coochie is behind lock and key. What a nightmare! You thought you just won the jousting tournament. There you were galloping past the first, second, and third banners with a triumphant grin, only to find as you neared the victor's podium, a castle wall blocking your charge, aka her chastity belt. Of course, you're aware these contraptions existed in the 1500s. Sometimes they were to guard a maiden's virtue, other times to keep her hands from wandering to forbidden pleasures. But for a guy like you, it's about as common as a peasant owning a dragon. Chastity belts are usually reserved for when rich men all around Europe have an issue with their partner's fidelity. You'd once heard that they didn't even exist, but now you're seeing one with your own eyes. How do you even get that thing off? This isn't going to plan. But what else did people of the Middle Ages do to preserve a woman's virginity? And what if your new wife cheats on you? Number 9. People in your time aren't exactly scholars of female anatomy, but they do know about the hymen, a thin membrane at the entrance of the vagina. When a maiden takes her first tumble in the sheets, it may break, sometimes with a touch of blood. People were writing this as far back as ancient times, stating that the hymen is like a protector of virgins. Little do you guys know, though, that females will only bleed about 40% of the time when they lose their virginity. Women know this, so they take some precautions, such as taking the bark of a holm oak and dissolving it with rainwater and putting it inside the vagina. The old wives say this'll make you bleed on the first night, Remember, once you have sex, she is your property, so virginity is very important. A friend of yours took this new bride to bed, and when she didn't bleed, he cried betrayal, accusing her of having been deflowered before. All the villagers who were listening at the window were called into the room. They crowded around as your friend demanded she expose herself, letting the local women inspect her like a prized goat at a market. She was forced to admit that she once had another guy, so her family had to pay your friend compensation. This is known as the law of the false virgin. It's rough, but it's what you gotta do. It's the Middle Ages. But it gets worse. Number 8. You're suspicious Matilda is not as pure as she tells you. You're a decent guy, so you're not up for invoking the law of the false virgin. Well, not yet anyway. There's only one thing for it. You're going to put her through a virginity test. A common test of a maiden's purity was to have her hold a sieve in those pure hands of hers and then fill it with water. If it leaks, she's been sullied. Of course, a clever woman might cheat by secretly coating the sieve. But you don't have a sieve handy, so you decide to put Matilda through a trial by ordeal. Admittedly old school even for the 16th century. You read about an Englishman from the 1200s who was accused by his neighbor of snooping around his house. They tied him up and they tossed him into a pond. If he floated, he was guilty. Unfortunately for him, he floated. And as the book grimly detailed, his manhood met a gruesome end. But you're a kind man, a soft-hearted type, so you and the villagers decide on a trial far more humane. You take a hot coal out of a fire and make Matilda hold it as she screams like a banshee. If her wounds heal nicely and they don't get infected, she's a virgin. It turns out she is as pure as the freshly fallen snow, but she's also a total knockout, which instantly makes you the talk and the envy of the entire village. And this is problematic. Number 7. It's gotta be said, you're what they might call the jealous type. Every time you send Matilda out to gather firewood, you can see the other men stare as they watch her handling logs. One day, you come home, and young Robin, the blacksmith's son, was in your bedroom in a state of undress. Meanwhile, Matilda, red-faced and dripping with sweat, was dangling halfway out the window. It isn't uncommon for a victim of adultery to beat the woman and the man to death. But for you, under the ecclesiastical courts of justice, you subject Matilda to public humiliation. You know in France they have la course, the run. The cheating wife and her lover have to run the gauntlet through the streets full of angry villagers. Sometimes, for added humiliation, the wife holds a leash tied directly to the guy's family jewels. You like the sound of that? But as always, the Germans do it with more efficiency. You've read that they usually shave the hair of the cheating wife, and even then she got off lucky. If she were a noblewoman, she'd likely be locked up in a tower or maybe accused of using her witch powers to seduce the other guy and then burned at the stake. So a bit of flogging and humiliation is pretty much letting Matilda off the hook. Still, she disgraced her family, and you can see it in her brothers and father's eyes. You gracefully accept some money and assure them that Matilda is ready to do penance. Number 6. You decided Matilda's penance would be on the lighter side. You went to the local tailor and you ordered her a new outfit, complete with a classic hair shirt. Rough, itchy, and guaranteed to drive her mad. But even better, since this is a sin of the genitals, you had the guy make a hairy piece of underwear. Matilda accepts it, of course, because this is her penance, something she wants to do to clear her sins. Now, when she goes to collect firewood, she looks like she is constantly being stung by bees, her penance turning every step into a public spectacle of itchy regret. She is furious, and behind your back she is spreading the word. She even had the audacity to brag to another woman that Robin's lance was not only bigger than yours, but wielded with far more finesse. Well, you're gonna have to do something about that big mouth of hers. Number 5. You like to think of yourself as an innovator. You've designed a device, a metal contraption, that you can put over a woman's head with something that'll hold down her tongue, making it impossible for her to speak. In the future, they'll call it the scold's bridle, or the witch's bridle. For witches, they might go as far as piercing the tongue, but for the common scold, women prone to gossip, sinful chatter, or criticizing their husband, there is no need for such barbarity. You're not animals. You tell her she is lucky. It's better than being put out in the stocks and people covering her in pig poop and rotten vegetables. Waving the key in her face, you tell her this is penance part 2, and after that, she's going to have to start thinking about making a baby. Number 4. You've been trying to make her pregnant and nothing is happening. You're really hoping she's not defective. If she is, you might have to divorce her, since it'll be her fault. But let's not be hasty. There are lots of ways to make a girl pregnant, and you are ready to explore them all. You've managed to get a hold of a 12th century gynecological text named the Trotula, a well-respected book all over Europe written by a man who will become known as the world's first gynecologist. There are chapters on fertility, so you know what to do. First, she wears a fertility charm designed by one of the local religious men. Even more effective, you read, is when the woman eats letters. You both carve letters out of lumps of cheese and she swallows them down with milk. It doesn't work, so you go to DEFCON 2. She takes fertility baths filled with various herbal concoctions, and all day long she wears a girdle made out of snakeskin. Some of your friends are calling this nonsense, but they're illiterate buffoons who wouldn't see the value of a cheesy letter if it hit them in the face. Not even that works. There is obviously something wrong with Matilda, so it's time to go to DEFCON 1. Number 3. As everyone knows, a woman's womb is a very dangerous place. It should be treated with the utmost care. When they play up, as wombs often do, they can send a woman into laughing fits, or they can choke her. They can make her weep like a heartbroken milkmaid, and worse, knock her out for as much as 7 days. Truly a drama queen of internal organs. Matilda's been feeling a bit unwell lately. It must be her womb. It started happening right after you'd given her that fertility drink of horse's semen mixed with rabbit's blood. So you decided to get her womb fumigated. Since everyone knows the womb is the source of the most ungodly stinks, you pump it full of aromatic concoctions made from cinnamon and cloves. The perfumed incense should cleanse the cursed chamber, banish the foul odors, and if fortune favors you, stop her womb from rebelling and grant you an heir worthy of your legacy. You wait in the corner of the room as the physician gets to work. Matilda, skirt hitched up and scowling, doesn't look very happy. Soon the room fills with so much smoke that you're forced to fling the door open. Naturally, the villagers come running, shouting about fire, only for your neighbor to wave them off, letting them know it's just a simple womb fumigation. It doesn't work, so now it's time to toss out the incense and dive into something a bit kinky. After all, desperate times call for creative measures. Number 2. You know the rules about sexual propriety. The church isn't exactly cheering for creativity in the bedroom. But you do want to liven things up in the bedroom, so you're going to try cross-dressing with some role play. Why not? Joan of Arc was a cross-dresser. They do it all the time in plays and the theater. And let's not forget the cross-dressing saints. Of course, you have to sneak off to the fields. Luckily for you, a local farmer has built some huts where he charges rent by the hour. You whip off your clothes, as she does hers, and you exchange them. You both feel an erotic thrill because it's so taboo. It's as sinful as it gets, but Matilda seems to love it. 6 weeks later, after God knows how many role-playing romps in the fields, one day Matilda comes home from collecting wood and pukes all over in the bedroom. She pulls back her corset and shows you a little bump in her stomach. Number 1. Matilda is in luck. You tell her you know an amulet guy, a prophet, the best in town. He'll be able to tell her if she's pregnant, and he'll know about the health of the baby. He only charges a farthing, and if you pee in a cup for him, he'll divine the child's destiny. Pregnant women's urine is legendary. It's so potent it can rust a nail, probably because it's teeming with tiny unseen creatures, or so they say. Matilda asks about a nurse or a midwife. You correct her. She means witches. She'll never learn. Which medieval sex tradition blew your mind the most? Drop your thoughts or your best medieval Tinder bio in the comments below. Now you need to watch how an erection works, or have a look at why you shouldn't masturbate according to the myths.